In the autumn of 2024, intelligence historian Dr. Sarah Chen made a discovery that would rewrite the narrative of Nazi Germany's rise to power and reveal one of the most audacious espionage operations of the 20th century. While examining recently declassified OSS files at the National Archives, she encountered a street photograph from Berlin dated September 1, 1939, the very day Germany invaded Poland. The image showed Friedrichstrasse during the lunch hour, with pedestrians hurrying past shop windows draped in Nazi flags, seemingly documenting the ordinary rhythm of life in the Reich's capital on the day that changed the world. What caught Dr. Chen's attention was an apparently mundane interaction in the photograph's foreground. An elegantly dressed man in a dark fedora hat bending down to speak with a blonde child of perhaps 8 years old, who clutched what appeared to be a small package wrapped in brown paper. When subjected to modern digital forensic analysis, this innocent moment would reveal evidence of an intelligence operation so sophisticated and far-reaching that it had influenced Nazi decision-making at the highest levels, while remaining completely invisible to German counterintelligence services. The photograph would lead to the identification of the man as Wilhelm Hartmann, a German industrialist who had secretly been working as a Soviet double agent for over a decade, and the child as Anna Richter, whose seemingly innocent package contained microfilm documentation of Hitler's most closely guarded military plans. More remarkably, the enhanced analysis would reveal that the photograph itself had been deliberately staged as part of an intelligence operation designed to create a permanent record of the most successful intelligence coup of World War II, evidence that Soviet agents had penetrated the innermost circles of Nazi leadership months before the war began. Dr. Marcus Whitmore, a specialist in Soviet intelligence operations at Cambridge University, was contacted when preliminary research revealed that the photograph might document a previously unknown aspect of Stalin's spy networks in Nazi Germany. The timing of the image, captured on the precise day that World War II began, suggested that it might provide evidence of how Soviet intelligence had obtained advance information about Nazi war plans, information that had enabled Stalin to position Soviet forces and resources in ways that would prove crucial during the German invasion of the Soviet Union 2 years later. The photograph had been taken by Ernst Hoffmann, a German press photographer working for the Völkischer Beobachter, the Nazi Party's official newspaper. Hoffmann's assignment that morning had been to capture images of Berlin citizens responding to news of the Polish invasion, photographs that would be used to document German popular support for the war effort. His image from Friedrichstrasse had been selected for publication in the newspaper's afternoon edition, though the specific interaction between Hartmann and Anna Richter had gone unnoticed by Nazi censors who had approved the photograph for public distribution. Ernst Hoffmann had been one of the Nazi Party's most trusted photographers, with a career that had begun during the party's early days in Munich and had continued through Hitler's rise to power. His intimate access to Nazi leadership and his reputation for producing images that effectively promoted Nazi ideology had made him invaluable to the party's propaganda machine. His photographs had documented numerous significant moments in Nazi history, from the 1923 Munich Beer Hall Putsch to the 1936 Berlin Olympics, creating a visual record that had helped establish the Nazi Party's mythical narrative about German destiny and Aryan superiority. Hoffmann's career had provided him with remarkable access to high-level Nazi officials and events, making him an ideal, unwitting participant in Soviet intelligence operations. His photographs had documented numerous significant moments in Nazi Germany's history, often capturing details and interactions that were invisible to casual observers, but contained crucial intelligence information for those who knew how to interpret them. His reputation for technical excellence and political reliability had made his work particularly valuable as a cover for intelligence activities. The photographer's personal archive, discovered in a Munich basement in 2019, had revealed that Hoffmann had been completely unaware of the intelligence significance of many of his images. His notes and contact sheets had shown that he had been focused purely on creating effective propaganda images and had never suspected that his work was being used to document clandestine intelligence operations. The naivety had made him perfect cover for Soviet intelligence activities that required documentation without raising suspicions among Nazi security services. Dr. Chen's analysis of the photograph using advanced digital enhancement and pattern recognition technology revealed details that had been completely invisible to 1939 examination methods. The enhancement process showed that Wilhelm Hartmann was wearing a distinctive lapel pin that appeared to be a standard Nazi Party badge, but contained subtle modifications that served as recognition signals for Soviet intelligence operatives. More significantly, the analysis revealed that Anna Richter's brown paper package bore minute markings that corresponded to codes used by Soviet intelligence services to identify high-priority intelligence materials. The digital forensic analysis also revealed evidence of sophisticated photographic techniques that suggested Hoffman's image had been deliberately planned rather than captured spontaneously. The lighting, composition, and positioning of key figures in the photograph showed characteristics that were consistent with staged intelligence documentation rather than random street photography. The revelation suggested that the entire scene had been orchestrated to create a permanent record of the intelligence operation while maintaining the appearance of normal civilian activity. Advanced spectroscopic analysis of the original film negative confirmed that the image had not been altered using techniques available in 1939, ruling out the possibility of post-war manipulation or forgery. The authentication process revealed that the photograph was a genuine historical document that had captured an actual intelligence exchange at the moment it occurred, providing unprecedented documentation of Soviet espionage operations in Nazi Germany. The analysis had been conducted using cutting-edge technology developed for forensic examination of historical documents, including multispectral imaging that could reveal details invisible to conventional photography and chemical analysis that could determine the age and composition of photographic materials. The comprehensive examination had confirmed that every aspect of the photograph was consistent with 1939 production techniques and materials, establishing its authenticity beyond reasonable doubt. If you're as intrigued as we are by these secrets of the past, consider subscribing to not miss any of our future investigations. The investigation revealed that Wilhelm Hartmann had been one of the Soviet Union's most valuable intelligence assets operating in Nazi Germany, though his activities had remained completely unknown to Western intelligence agencies until recently declassified Soviet archives had revealed the scope of his operations. Hartmann had been recruited by Soviet intelligence in 1928, when he had been a young engineer working for German industrial firms that were secretly collaborating with Soviet technology development programs during the period of German-Soviet cooperation under the Treaty of Rapallo. Wilhelm Hartmann had been born in 1898 to a wealthy Bavarian family with extensive connections to German heavy industry and military circles. His father, Friedrich Hartmann, had been a prominent industrialist who had built a fortune manufacturing steel and armaments during World War I, while his mother had come from a Prussian military family with centuries of service to German rulers. This background had provided Wilhelm with natural access to the highest levels of German society and had made his eventual recruitment by Soviet intelligence both surprising and incredibly valuable. Hartmann's recruitment had occurred during a business trip to Moscow in 1928, when he had been negotiating technology transfer agreements as part of the secret military cooperation between Germany and the Soviet Union that had been established to circumvent the restrictions of the Treaty of Versailles. Soviet intelligence officers had approached him not through ideological conversion, but through a combination of blackmail and financial incentives that had gradually drawn him into intelligence work before he had fully understood the implications of his activities. Hartmann's background had made him exceptionally valuable as a Soviet intelligence asset. Born into a wealthy Prussian family with extensive connections to German military and industrial circles, he had possessed natural access to information and individuals that would have been impossible for foreign operatives to reach. His engineering expertise had provided legitimate cover for his interest in military technology and industrial developments, while his social position had enabled him to develop relationships with Nazi officials who trusted him completely. The research revealed that by 1939, Hartmann had achieved a position of remarkable influence within German military-industrial circles, serving on advisory committees that had access to Hitler's most sensitive strategic planning documents. His company, Hartmann Industrial Solutions, had been awarded contracts for producing specialized equipment used in German military operations, giving him legitimate access to detailed information about Nazi war plans and military capabilities. Hartmann Industrial Solutions had been established in 1933, using capital that had been secretly provided by Soviet intelligence services through a complex network of shell companies and financial intermediaries. The company had been designed to serve as both a legitimate business enterprise and a cover for intelligence operations, enabling Hartmann to develop relationships with German military officials while providing Soviet intelligence with detailed information about German industrial and military capabilities. The company's contracts had included production of specialized radio equipment for German military communication systems, optical instruments for artillery and aircraft, and precision manufacturing equipment for German armaments factories. These contracts had provided Hartmann with access to detailed specifications for German military equipment and had enabled him to observe and report on German industrial capacity and military production capabilities. Anna Richter, the child visible in the photograph, had been identified through comparison with German civil registration records and survivor testimonies collected by post-war denazification tribunals. Anna had been the daughter of Klaus Richter, a mid-level official in the German Ministry of Defense who had been secretly recruited by Soviet intelligence after becoming disillusioned with Nazi policies following Kristallnacht in November 1938. Klaus Richter had been born in 1904 in Hamburg to a middle-class family with no particular political affiliations. His father had been a civil servant in the Hamburg city government, while his mother had taught school before her marriage. Klaus had studied law at the University of Hamburg and had entered government service in 1928, initially working in local administration before being transferred to Berlin in 1933 to work in the newly reorganized defense ministry under Nazi rule. Klaus Richter's recruitment by Soviet intelligence had been facilitated by his horror at witnessing the systematic persecution of Jewish colleagues and his growing understanding that Nazi Germany was preparing for a war of unprecedented destructiveness. His position within the defense ministry had provided him with access to strategic planning documents, but the sensitive nature of this information had required extraordinary measures to transmit it to Soviet handlers without detection by German counterintelligence services. The recruitment process had been carefully orchestrated by Soviet intelligence officers who had identified Klaus as a potential asset based on his access to sensitive information and his growing disillusionment with Nazi policies. The approach had been made through intermediaries who had gradually drawn him into intelligence work without explicitly revealing the full extent of what they were asking him to do, a technique that had reduced the psychological barriers to collaboration while maintaining operational security. The use of Anna as a courier had been both operationally brilliant and morally complex. As a child, she had been able to move freely through government buildings and military facilities where adults would have faced intense scrutiny. Her apparent innocence had made her invisible to German security services, while her intelligence and training had enabled her to carry out complex intelligence tasks with remarkable effectiveness. Anna's training had been conducted by her father, under the supervision of Soviet intelligence handlers, who had provided detailed instructions about how to prepare a child for intelligence work without causing psychological trauma or raising suspicions among teachers, neighbors, and other adults who might have reported unusual behavior to German authorities. The training had included memory techniques, basic encryption methods, and psychological preparation for operating under extreme stress conditions. Dr. Whitmore's research into Soviet intelligence archives revealed that the information obtained through the Hartmann-Richter network had provided Stalin with detailed advance knowledge of Nazi military capabilities, strategic objectives, and timeline planning that had been crucial for Soviet preparations for the eventual German invasion. The intelligence had been so valuable that it had influenced major strategic decisions made by Soviet military and political leadership during the critical period between 1939 and 1941. The Soviet intelligence archives, made available to researchers following the collapse of the Soviet Union, had contained extensive documentation of the Hartmann-Richter network's activities, including detailed reports of intelligence obtained, analyses of its strategic significance, and assessments of how the information had been used by Soviet military and political leadership. The documents had revealed that the network had been considered one of the most valuable intelligence assets operated by Soviet intelligence services during the pre-war period. The investigation revealed that the September 1939 intelligence exchange, captured in Hoffman's photograph, had involved the transfer of microfilm documentation of German military plans for the invasion of Western Europe, information that had been obtained through Klaus Richter's access to Defense Ministry planning documents. The intelligence had included detailed orders of battle, logistical planning documents, and strategic assessments that revealed the full scope of German military ambitions beyond the immediate invasion of Poland. The microfilm had been produced using sophisticated miniaturization techniques that had been developed by Soviet intelligence services specifically for operations in Nazi Germany, where the risk of discovery had required the use of extremely compact and easily concealed intelligence materials. The film had contained hundreds of pages of German military documents that had been photographed using high-resolution cameras and reduced to a size that could be hidden within everyday objects like toys, books, or clothing. This intelligence had been transmitted to Moscow through a sophisticated communication network that had been established throughout Europe by Soviet intelligence services. The information had been analyzed by specialist teams within the GRU, Soviet military intelligence, and had been incorporated into strategic planning documents that had guided Soviet military preparations during the period leading up to the German invasion of the Soviet Union. The communication network had included radio operators, courier services, and dead-drop locations that had enabled Soviet intelligence to maintain contact with agents throughout Nazi-controlled territory while minimizing the risk of detection by German counterintelligence services. The network had been designed with multiple redundancies and alternative communication methods that had ensured that crucial intelligence could reach Moscow even if individual components of the system were compromised. As we delve deeper into these mysteries, we invite you to join our community of explorers of the inexplicable, subscribe and become part of the search for truth. The analysis of the microfilm contents, preserved in Soviet archives and recently made available to researchers, revealed that the intelligence had provided Stalin with crucial insights into German strategic thinking and military capabilities. The documents had included German assessments of Soviet military strength, proposed strategies for a future German-Soviet conflict, and detailed plans for economic exploitation of conquered territories. The German documents had been particularly valuable because they had revealed Hitler's long-term strategic objectives and had provided evidence that Nazi Germany was planning for a prolonged period of warfare that would eventually include conflict with the Soviet Union. This intelligence had enabled Stalin to begin military and industrial preparations for a conflict that he had known was inevitable, despite the temporary alliance established by the Nazi-Soviet Non-Aggression Pact. Dr. Chen's research into the broader context of Soviet intelligence operations in Nazi Germany revealed that the Hartmann-Richter network had been part of a much larger intelligence apparatus that had placed Soviet agents and sympathizers throughout German government, military and industrial institutions. The scope of Soviet penetration of Nazi Germany had been far more extensive than Western intelligence agencies had realized during the war or in the immediate post-war period. The larger intelligence apparatus had been organized into multiple parallel networks that had been designed to provide different types of intelligence while serving as backup systems in case individual networks were compromised by German counterintelligence. The networks had included agents in German military units, government ministries, industrial firms, and scientific research institutions, creating a comprehensive intelligence gathering system that had provided Soviet leadership with detailed information about German capabilities and intentions. The investigation revealed that Soviet intelligence had been operating multiple parallel networks within Nazi Germany, each designed to provide specific types of intelligence and to serve as backup systems in case other networks were compromised. The Hartmann-Richter network had been particularly valuable because it had combined high-level political intelligence with detailed military technical information that was essential for understanding German war-making capabilities. The parallel networks had been carefully compartmentalized to prevent the compromise of one network from affecting the others, with each network using different communication methods, operating procedures, and intelligence-gathering techniques. This compartmentalization had enabled Soviet intelligence to maintain multiple sources of information about German activities, while reducing the risk that German counterintelligence could identify and eliminate all Soviet intelligence assets. The research revealed that the intelligence obtained through these networks had influenced Soviet strategic planning in ways that had ultimately contributed to the Soviet victory over Nazi Germany. The advanced knowledge of German intentions and capabilities had enabled Soviet military leaders to develop defensive strategies and prepare industrial resources in ways that had maximized Soviet advantages while exploiting German weaknesses. The strategic planning had included decisions about where to position Soviet military forces, how to organize Soviet industrial production, and what types of military equipment to prioritize in Soviet armaments programs. The intelligence had also influenced diplomatic strategies that had enabled Soviet leadership to manipulate German expectations while preparing for the inevitable conflict between Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union. The investigation expanded to include analysis of how the intelligence obtained through the Berlin networks had been used by Soviet leadership to influence their diplomatic and military strategies during the early years of World War II. The advanced knowledge of German plans had enabled Stalin to pursue policies that appeared to support German objectives, while actually positioning Soviet resources and capabilities to resist German aggression when it eventually came. The diplomatic strategy had included the Nazi-Soviet Non-Aggression Pact, which had been viewed by Soviet leadership not as a permanent alliance, but as a temporary measure that would provide time for Soviet military and industrial preparations, while potentially encouraging Germany to become involved in a prolonged conflict with Western European powers that would weaken German capabilities before the inevitable German-Soviet conflict began. The research revealed that Stalin's seemingly naive trust in Hitler during the period of the Nazi-Soviet Pact had actually been based on detailed intelligence about German strategic planning that had convinced Soviet leadership that they had sufficient time to complete their military preparations before German aggression was directed toward the Soviet Union. The intelligence had been crucial for enabling Soviet industrial and military mobilization that would prove essential during the Great Patriotic War. The industrial mobilization had included the relocation of Soviet industrial facilities away from areas that would be vulnerable to German attack, the expansion of Soviet military production capabilities, and the development of new weapon systems that had been designed specifically to counter German military advantages. The mobilization had been guided by detailed intelligence about German military capabilities and strategic objectives that had been obtained through networks like the Hartmann-Richter operation. Dr. Whitmore's analysis of Soviet military archives revealed that the intelligence obtained through the Berlin networks had been integrated into comprehensive strategic assessments that had guided Soviet military planning throughout the war. The information had been particularly valuable for understanding German military doctrine, technological capabilities, and logistical limitations that could be exploited by Soviet strategic planning. The strategic assessments had included detailed analyses of German military strengths and weaknesses, predictions about likely German strategic objectives and operational methods, and recommendations about how Soviet forces could be organized and employed to maximize their effectiveness against German military capabilities. The assessments had been regularly updated based on new intelligence obtained through Soviet spy networks throughout Europe. The investigation revealed that Wilhelm Hartmann had continued his intelligence activities throughout World War II, providing Soviet intelligence with crucial information about German military production, technological developments, and strategic decision-making at the highest levels of Nazi leadership. His position within German industry had enabled him to observe and report on changes in German military capabilities and strategic priorities as the war progressed. Hartmann's wartime intelligence activities had included reporting on German research and development programs, production capabilities, and bottlenecks in German military industries, and morale and political conditions within German leadership circles. His reports had been particularly valuable for understanding how German strategic thinking had evolved as the war had turned against Nazi Germany, and how German leadership had been responding to military setbacks and resource shortages. Anna Richter's role in intelligence operations had evolved as she had grown older, with her intelligence training and language skills making her valuable for more sophisticated intelligence tasks. By 1943, she had been working directly for Soviet intelligence services in occupied Eastern Europe, using her German background and Nazi Party connections as cover for intelligence operations behind German lines. Anna's evolution from child courier to adult intelligence operative had been carefully managed by Soviet intelligence handlers who had provided her with advanced training in espionage techniques, multiple language skills, and sophisticated cover identities that had enabled her to operate effectively in dangerous environments throughout Nazi-occupied Europe. Her success had demonstrated the potential value of long-term intelligence asset development that began during childhood. The research revealed that both Hartmann and Anna Richter had survived the war and had continued their intelligence careers during the Cold War period. Hartmann had relocated to East Germany, where he had served in various industrial and technical positions while continuing to provide intelligence to Soviet services. Anna Richter had been trained as a linguist and had worked for East German intelligence services, specializing in operations targeting Western intelligence agencies. Their post-war careers had been facilitated by Soviet intelligence services that had recognized their value as experienced operatives with established cover identities and extensive knowledge of Western intelligence methods and capabilities. Both had been given positions within East German society that had provided cover for continued intelligence work while rewarding them for their wartime service to Soviet intelligence. The investigation revealed that the Hartmann-Richter network had served as a model for subsequent Soviet intelligence operations during the Cold War, demonstrating the effectiveness of long-term agent development and the importance of establishing intelligence networks within target societies rather than relying solely on short-term intelligence gathering missions. The network's success had influenced Soviet intelligence doctrine for decades after the end of World War II. Modern intelligence historians consulted during the investigation acknowledged that the Hartmann-Richter network had represented one of the most successful intelligence operations of World War II, demonstrating the effectiveness of long-term agent development and the importance of placing intelligence assets in positions where they could observe and influence high-level strategic decision-making. The success of the network had been attributed to several factors, including the careful selection and training of intelligence assets, the development of sophisticated cover identities and operational methods, and the establishment of secure communication systems that had enabled intelligence to be transmitted to Soviet handlers without detection by German counterintelligence services. The discovery of the photograph had provided important insights into the role of civilian intelligence networks in shaping the course of World War II, showing how ordinary families and business relationships could be leveraged to create highly effective intelligence operations that operated under the cover of normal social and economic activities. The civilian networks had been particularly effective because they had been able to blend seamlessly into German society while maintaining access to sensitive information and maintaining contact with Soviet intelligence services. The use of established social and economic relationships had provided natural cover for intelligence activities that would have been impossible to maintain using traditional espionage methods. The investigation had also revealed the moral complexities involved in intelligence operations that use children as agents and couriers, raising questions about the ethics of involving minors in dangerous intelligence activities, even when the ultimate objectives were legitimate and important for national security and international stability. The ethical questions had been particularly complex in Anna Richter's case, where a child had been trained and used for intelligence activities that had placed her in extreme danger while contributing to objectives that had ultimately helped defeat Nazi Germany. The case had demonstrated the difficult moral choices that intelligence agencies had faced during World War II when traditional ethical constraints had been challenged by the existential threat posed by fascist regimes. Dr. Chen's final analysis of the photograph concluded that it represented unprecedented documentation of intelligence operations that had played crucial roles in Soviet preparations for World War II and in the ultimate defeat of Nazi Germany. The image provided evidence of the sophisticated methods used by Soviet intelligence agencies to gather information about German military plans and demonstrated the importance of human intelligence networks in understanding enemy intentions and capabilities. The documentation had been particularly significant because it had provided physical evidence of intelligence activities that had previously been known only through archival documents and testimony from intelligence operatives. The photograph had offered visual confirmation of how intelligence exchanges had been conducted and had provided insights into the operational methods used by Soviet intelligence services during their most successful period. The research revealed that the intelligence obtained through the Berlin networks had been instrumental in enabling Soviet victory in World War II, providing Stalin with advanced knowledge of German strategic objectives and military capabilities that had been crucial for Soviet strategic planning and resource allocation during the conflict. The intelligence had been particularly valuable for enabling Soviet military and industrial preparations that had ultimately determined the outcome of the German invasion of the Soviet Union. The advanced knowledge of German capabilities and intentions had enabled Soviet leadership to position resources and develop strategies that had maximized Soviet advantages while exploiting German weaknesses and strategic miscalculations. The investigation had broader implications for understanding the role of intelligence operations in shaping 20th century history, demonstrating how espionage networks had influenced major political and military decisions that had determined the outcomes of global conflicts. The Berlin networks had shown that effective intelligence operations required long-term commitment, careful agent development, and the willingness to take extraordinary risks to obtain crucial information. The discovery of the photograph had provided closure for several families whose relatives had been involved in wartime intelligence operations, but whose contributions had remained classified and unrecognized for decades. The documentation of the Hartmann-Richter network had validated family oral traditions about involvement in resistance activities and had provided evidence of the crucial roles played by ordinary civilians in the fight against fascism. The validation had been particularly important for families who had maintained secrecy about their relatives' intelligence activities for decades after the war, often enduring suspicion and social isolation because they could not explain their family members' wartime activities or acknowledge their contributions to the Allied victory. The declassification of intelligence archives had finally enabled these families to understand and honor their relatives' sacrifices. Contemporary intelligence agencies consulted during the investigation acknowledged that the methods and principles demonstrated by the Berlin networks remained relevant for modern intelligence operations, showing the continuing importance of human intelligence gathering and the development of long-term relationships within target organizations and societies. The relevance of historical intelligence methods had been particularly evident in the continued use of family relationships and business connections as cover for intelligence operations, techniques that had proven effective during World War II and had remained valuable tools for intelligence agencies operating in complex international environments during the Cold War and contemporary periods. In her concluding report, Dr. Chen reflected on the profound implications of the Hartmann-Richter network for understanding how individuals and families had risked their lives to provide crucial intelligence that had influenced the outcome of World War II. The photograph that captured the intelligence exchange between Hartmann and Anna Richter served as a reminder that the defeat of Nazi Germany had depended not just on military capabilities, but on the courage and dedication of ordinary people who had been willing to risk everything to oppose tyranny. The story of the spy and the child reminds us that some of history's most significant intelligence operations have involved ordinary families who chose to risk their lives to serve causes larger than themselves. The intelligence operation documented in Hoffmann's photograph had provided Stalin with crucial advanced knowledge of German war plans, yet the details of this contribution had remained hidden until modern analytical techniques had revealed the true significance of what appeared to be an ordinary street interaction. Perhaps most remarkably, the photograph demonstrates how children could be trained to play crucial roles in intelligence operations, using their innocence and freedom of movement to facilitate activities that would have been impossible for adult agents. Anna Richter's involvement in her father's intelligence work had shown how family loyalty and ideological commitment could create effective intelligence networks that operated under the most dangerous conditions. The past guards secrets that challenge comprehension, and what we've uncovered in the shadows of that Berlin street reveals that some of World War II's most crucial intelligence operations remained completely invisible to German counterintelligence, while providing the Allies with information that helped determine the war's outcome. Perhaps the real question isn't how the Soviets obtained such detailed intelligence about Nazi war plans, but whether we fully appreciate the extraordinary courage of families who sacrificed their safety to preserve freedom and defeat fascism during humanity's greatest test. The true nature of this mystery remains in the shadows, but we want to know your opinion. Use the comments section below and tell us what you believe. If you are fascinated by unraveling the secrets behind our darkest histories, subscribe to the channel and activate notifications, for there is much more to be unmasked.